This is a story from my uncle and my dad that they've told countless times at family gatherings, and it still creeps us all out just as much. It was the 80s. My dad and Uncle Jack have always been avid fishermen. They'd go out deep-sea fishing at least a few times a year in my uncle's boat. He had a 70s two-cabin cruiser. I've seen pictures and the thing was huge. My uncle used to live in Cape Cod, Massachusetts, where he'd dock his boat. My dad would go up there for a weekend once in a while to go out to sea for a night with my uncle. I've never been into fishing. My dad tried to get me into it, but it's not my thing. I'm also not going to pretend to know much about fishing, but I know the fish you catch will be bigger and more abundant the deeper into the ocean you go. I think they'd primarily go for striped bass, tuna, and cod. They'd go about 20 miles out to sea and just catch whatever they could fit on the boat. They used to be so obsessed that my uncle's walls in his house to this day are still covered 90% in pictures of him and my dad holding fish. This one time though, it was a very unexpectedly cloudy night and it was a new moon. They were currently in the cabin having a beer together playing cards after supper when something went wrong with the boat and the lights died. My Uncle Jack had to check the circuit panel, but doing so in the dark with nothing but a crappy flashlight was difficult though. Upon checking the circuit panel, my uncle learned that something caused 2 of the fuses to blow, inconveniently eliminating almost all the lights on the boat, including the running lights. They didn't really have much of a choice other than to call it a night early and wait till dawn to head back to the shore. But within an hour was around the time they started to hear a humming type sound coming from around 20 meters in the horizon. They went out onto the deck of the boat, and my dad always says it was nearly impossible to tell if his eyes were open or closed. That's how dark it was outside. There was a strange humming sound coming from behind the boat. Both my dad and uncle stepped to the stern of the boat, and they realized the humming sound didn't sound like any kind of fish. They said it sounded like a person groaning. But even with the flashlight, they couldn't see beyond maybe 5 meters in front of them. It was starting to rain, so the 2 of them went inside the cabin. It would have been a horrible idea to try to drive the boat in pitch blackness in the rain, so they went to sleep. The next morning, at the crack of dawn, my uncle woke up my dad and told him to come outside to the deck. Through the thick fog, they could see another boat floating in the near distance. My Uncle Jack drove the boat closer to the vessel and then blew the whistle he had on board to try to get anyone's attention who may have been in the cabin. The boat looked like it could have been abandoned though, so attaching a rope from one boat to another, my uncle jumped onto the boat and the cabin door was unlocked. He stepped down into the cabin and smelled the disgusting, sickening smell of death. He saw a man hanging by a rope in the cabin. He ran back out and back onto his boat and tried to throw up into the water. My dad says he didn't even dare go down and see the body after his brother told him what he saw. My dad and Uncle Jack marked their current coordinates and contacted the nearest Coast Guard station through the VHF radio. The Coast Guard was there within an hour, and only then did my dad and uncle head back to the shore. They still don't know what the humming sound they heard was. This story really still haunts my uncle the most because he's the one who actually saw the dead body. They definitely together hold the scariest fisherman story I've ever heard.